Alright guys, how's it going? Welcome back. Today I'm in this 2015 MG3. It's a very cheap Chinese 5-door Super Mini, so naturally you might be expecting me to tear this poor little car apart. Well, no, you're right, I am. Where shall I start? Although it proudly wears the famous Morris Garage badge, it's actually now Chinese. This model's been around in China since 2011, but it wasn't until 2013 that us lucky Brits were able to get our hands on one. It's now sold like any other white good or supermarket product, i.e. for the lowest price possible, undercutting the competition, and the main aim is to just catch out the people who don't value, only price. You see these things advertised all the time, nothing down, zero interest, and $1.99 a month or whatever the figure may be. I'm surprised they've never done a buy one get one free offer. This car pretty much sums up the Chinese car market here in the UK. They look alright on the face of it, but there's absolutely no finesse or refinement or quality. It really is a case of stack them high, sell them cheap. When I say it looks alright, I mean styling wise, it looks okay. It's typical Chinese design really, it's a bit of a copycat. Take the rear for example, it looks just like a Fiat Grande Punto. The upper rear quarter looks like a Suzuki Ignis, which is not a compliment by the way, in case you were wondering. The front's okay I guess, I mean there's nothing particularly groundbreaking or revolutionary about it, but it looks alright. You can customise these cars too with various funky colours and transfers, but to be honest I think that's MG's pathetic attempt at trying to hoodwink the punter into thinking they're buying some sort of Mini with a chili pack or Suzuki Swift. They're not. Moving inside the little MG, it's more of the same. If you were to see a picture of this interior, you'd think it looked alright, and it does look alright. But when you start to poke around and press the buttons, you realise it's just cheap and nasty. It feels like a Kia from the mid-90s. It feels like a Perodua or a Proton. From the minute you put the key in the ignition, you're reminded that this car was built to a very strict budget. Let me show you this. You put the key in, turn the ignition on, nothing happens for about 5 seconds. Then you go to start the car, and then all of a sudden all the ignition lights come on, as they should from the very start, and they remain on for a further 5 seconds. I'm sure they haven't designed it that way. It's kind of laggy, which sums up this car because the whole car just lags behind all of its rivals. I gave a mate of mine a lift in this car earlier today, and I didn't say anything to him, it was completely unprompted, but I could see him out the corner of my eye. I could see his nose curling as he was looking around the car, evaluating it. Sure enough, a minute or so later, when I guess he just couldn't take any more of it, he said, "Matt, this is horrible, isn't it?" And I couldn't argue with him. All of the plastics are cheap and hollow sounding, and all the buttons take a few seconds to respond. The window controls feel very cheap, as do the mirror controls. This is the trouble with this kind of car. Yes, it's cheap, but you get what you pay for. This nasty rubber they've used around the handbrake is offensive to anyone with a sense of touch or smell. The gear stick's quite an achievement too, in that it's neither an attractive design, nor is it pleasant to use. There are several storage compartments, and there are 3 cup holders, in case any of you were wondering. But cups and bottles must be smaller in China because these cup holders can't cope with our decadent Western cans and bottles. They simply fall out every time. Moving under the bonnet, I'm afraid it doesn't get any better. There's only one engine available. It's this 1.5 litre 16 valve 4-cylinder petrol. And it feels like an engine from the 1980s. It feels asthmatic and reluctant to move. It's coarse and lethargic. I'm told it produces 106 horsepower, which is quite a flattering figure, given its dreary performance. Most manufacturers could get better performance figures from an engine 2/3 this size. Torque is an almost immeasurable 137 Newton meters. You just really have to rev this engine before it shows any signs of putting on its training shoes and getting a move on. It isn't massively economical either. It'll average about 42 miles per gallon, which sounds alright, but for a lightweight Super Mini, it isn't anything to write home about. Road tax here in the UK is £155 a year too, which is way more than the 20 or 30 quid a year which most cars of this type will set you back. I'd like to be able to tell you about how it drives and handles, but to be honest with you, I haven't been able to get up to those sorts of speeds where any shortcomings present themselves. I'm sure they exist, I just haven't actually personally experienced them. When this MG3 was safety tested, it only scored 3 out of 5 stars. Reliability wise, they've copied Kia and offered a very tempting and reassuringly long 7-year warranty, which is good because I honestly think you might need it. I'd be extremely surprised if under all this cheap plastic lay some clever engineering. So yeah, I think it's a good thing that you get a 7-year or 80,000 mile warranty. I imagine MG will capture a small share of the OAP market with this car, because if you only do 1,000 miles a year and you want a brand new car sitting in your driveway, the MG3 is the cheapest way to achieve that. On the upside, the legroom's very good, the seats are quite comfortable, the spec's alright, I've got air conditioning which still works after 6 years, and I've got remote central locking, which doesn't. It has digital DAB radio, which is quite good, although as you can imagine the sound quality isn't great. It almost sounds like, you know when you sat on a bus next to somebody playing loud music through their earphones? It sounds a bit like that, as if you're just catching the music as a third party. If I'm forced to find something on this car that I do like, then I suppose I quite like the font they've used on the boot. Looks alright, I suppose. Used prices here in the UK start at around £3,000, which, yes, is very tempting, if you care only about price. If you care about everything else more, then you really must buy something else. Well, I think that sums up the MG3, a cheap Chinese super mini trying to cash in on its British heritage. You know, the funny thing is, it really is no worse than MGs of old, with their blown head gaskets and leaky sunroofs and noisy tappets. So anyway, thank you once again for watching. Make sure you give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't done already. You can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I'll leave the link below. If you've got any comments or questions, let me know, and I'll do my best to get back to you. So, cheers guys. I'll see you next time.